Mpofu, right at the beginning of your address and more recently in discussion with my brother Majid, you asked where the IEC, what the basis was for the IEC decision. Mm-hmm. And you asked, did the IEC have any power to disqualify Mr. Zuma? Perhaps I can ask you to have a look at the record at page 246.
Yes, I'm there.
As I understand the procedure, and we dealt with matters similar to this earlier in the week, the parties compile lists of their prospective candidates. Sub 3, the Commission must decide the objection.
Yes.
In other words, it must decide, is the objection good or bad?
Yeah. And
must notify the objector and the party. It doesn't inform the candidate that the nominated candidate of the decision in the prescribed manner. And then in subsection 4, the objector or the party who nominated the candidate may appeal against the decision of the Commission to the Electoral Court in the prescribed manner. Court, and then sub 5, the Electoral Court must consider and decide the appeal and notify the parties. The power of the IEC to determine that the second respondent was disqualified is to be found in section 30 sub 3. The Commission must decide the objection. It decides the objection, it upholds the objection, and thereby it disqualifies the second respondent. No. And thereafter, sorry if you allow me to finish. Thereafter, there's a process involving an appeal, which ultimately lands up in the electoral court, and that's why we're here, because of the electoral court. So I'm suggesting to you that there is a clear basis for the IEC having exercised its power of disqualification, and I'm just pointing that out.
Yes. Okay. May I respond? No. That's the most incorrect way of determining jurisdiction, because that's what ultra-vires means. It's jurisdiction, sometimes called authority. So you can't derive jurisdiction from the fact that you exercised it wrongly. So if I bring a crash and bash motor accident case in Cape Town when the accident happened in Johannesburg, I can't go to the sections of the Superior Courts Act and say, yeah, but court, you have the right. But they say, yes, we have that right if we have jurisdiction over the matter. So that's why jurisdiction is discussed up front. So it can be, you can't lift yourself up by your own bootstraps and say, simply because you have a power to decide an objection, therefore you don't have the power to determine whether that objection is in the right place in the first place. Or you bring a claim that is supposed to be in the magistrate court or whatever, or in the labor court for that matter. If you go to the High Court with a claim that should be in the labor court, then the first thing that court must do is to determine its jurisdiction. Does it have the power to determine that? It can say, yes, because we are the High Court, we're going to determine this. And then afterwards, we're going to, the case of Makanya, Kaba, Chirwa, make that very clear. That the jurisdiction point is a primary point. You can't derive the power to do something wrong from the fact that you did it wrong. And by the way, sorry, Justice Campbell, one of the criticisms which have not been addressed, which we level against the IEC for exceeding its powers, is because if you go at 290, Justice Campbell, 290, and this is the point that Mr. Ngogaitobi was asked in the Electoral Court. Okay, if you're saying this thing ended on the 11th because there's a second proviso, let's not forget about the 5 years. And he was asked, when does that 5 years start or stop? And he couldn't answer the question. And that's because this is what Mr. what's his name? No, it's not Mr. Nkosi. Okay, this was a response to him, but Dr. Matsapula, the one that is before Nkosi, said he abandoned his objection. So the only objection before the court now is that of Dr. Matsapula. So Dr. Matsapula, to use your analogy, Justice Gamble, had pleaded his case, if you work with me. So when he pleaded...
Sorry, Mr. Mpofu, I wasn't debating with you the question of jurisdiction. You were asking, you've repeatedly asked, where the IEC sourced its power to disqualify the second respondent. I'm suggesting to you, it's got nothing to do with jurisdiction. I'm suggesting to you that that power vests in the IEC by virtue of the Electoral Act and by virtue of Section 30. That's all I'm suggesting to you.
Well,
if you don't agree, that we can agree to disagree.
Well, thank you. No.
Thank you.
Well, it's the first time that I hear that the power of a tribunal to do something has nothing to do with jurisdiction. That's what jurisdiction means. It's the power to determine a question, the power and the authority to determine a question. That's what it is. It has been said by the SCA, it has been said by this court, that it's the power to determine something. And all I'm saying, Justice Gamble, is that the IEC does not have the power to expand the objection, even using your 33. Dr. Matsapula says, Mr. J.G. Zuma completed his sentence when he was released from prison on 11 August 2024 following a special remission of sentence in terms of Section 84(2)J of the Constitution for certain categories of sentence offenders. The person who's really objecting, to use those words, is defining the ambit of his objection to accept that the sentence ended on the 11th of August. The IEC impermissibly brings a different case here, which is not confined by the pleadings, quote unquote, of the objection that it is supposedly determining under Section 33. You cannot do that. Even a court of law doesn't do that. The court can't say, oh, well, you've pleaded that you lost a car, but we think you've also lost a bus. So therefore, we're going to determine it outside of the jurisdiction which you, as the objector, have defined. That's really the point I was making. And jurisdiction is defined in Baxter, in Hoekstra, and all the literature as the power to determine something. Actually, even in the old cases, before the Constitution, I forget the name of the case. It was in the 1920s. It was said that by NSCJ, jurisdiction means the power of a court to entertain. I think that was the word, to entertain something.
Mr. Mpofu,
Thank you.
I'm really sorry to belabor this point, but
Yeah.
I'm confused about it.